Hi cuties! So today we're gonna have some tough talking over here. I recently watched Wordsmith Sarah Shawn Weber's, I think I said that right, Shawn Weber's channel. She had a video about some unpopular opinions, and I really liked what she had to say about it, so definitely go check out her video. I will link it in the description. But it kind of inspired me to, let's talk about some more unpopular opinions. So I did reach out to everybody during a live stream to start submitting a bunch of different unpopular opinions about a bunch of different topics like AuthorTube, NaNoWriMo, writing in general, publishing, all the fun stuff. So I have compiled a bunch of them. We're not going to go through every single one because in true Q fashion, we're going to do this the only way I know how. Randomly choosing them from a bag. I put all the opinions in here. I think I'll go through maybe about 10 of them. I think 10's a nice solid number if I don't spend too much talking about them. But yeah, so it could be from any of those little facets of the writing world. So here we go. The very first one we have is about NaNoWriMo, and an unpopular opinion is anything not new is cheating in NaNoWriMo. With the context of this includes things like sequels and things, so that's where I disagree. I do think certain things are cheating in NaNoWriMo. That's why we have Nano Rebels. I often end up being on the Rebel scale because I'll be like in progress of something and I'll just add an additional 50,000 words to it. So I'm not wholeheartedly on board with this one, but I will give it a little bit of a, I see where you're coming from and I can get it. I do think for the most part to be considered a traditional Nano instead of a Nano Rebel is that it must be a fresh page. Nothing else can be pre-written for it. You cannot copy paste anything into it. It must be purely blank page at the start of NaNoWriMo, and then 50,000 words later you have achieved it. I think sequels are fine if you're starting it. I definitely would never like already pre-count something I've pre-written before Nano. That defeats the purpose of Nano. That is cheating. I think working on something that you've already started or are in a series or something is not necessarily cheating. You're just more on the rebel side of things. Unpopular opinion number 2 is a thickin'. This one is about indie authors. The stigma around indie authors has nothing to do with grammar. I can mostly agree with this because there's a lot of indie books out there that are fantastic with it, but I think people use grammar as the excuse to not like self-published and indie authors when it's a little bit deeper than that. There are plenty of traditionally published books that have grammar mistakes in them, that have spelling mistakes in them. There's plenty of those, so it doesn't matter which side of the publishing fence you're on, there can always be a typo or a grammar mistake. However, I do think that the stigma around self-published authors is a little bit on the classist side of things, because in order to be a traditionally published author these days, you need to have money and a following, and you can't just be a little writer in your hovel anymore. For a lot of authors, in order for them to be taken on by agents or by publishing companies, they have to already prove to themselves that they're worth the investment, not because of the book they've written, but because of who they are and what they can bring monetarily to the table. So I do think there is that side of it, whereas the grammar and stuff is just an excuse to not like self-published writers, especially because self-published writers, usually we can't afford editors. Editing is a very expensive thing, and if we're doing it all on our own, we get word blindness where we already see what our brain is telling us we're supposed to have written there, and we miss over the typos. That is a real thing. But I can agree with this that the stigma around indies is actually not really about grammar. Unpopular opinion number 3. Okay, this is just about publishing in general. Content warnings should be mainstream, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. There are several things that when I pick up a book, if I don't know about it and I read in that book later, I will get very angry about. Things such as like an animal death for me can be very, very much something I don't like to read about. Cheating is one I really don't like reading about. There are lots of different things that even if I know about them, it doesn't necessarily mean I won't read the book, but it's nice to know that something is coming. Now, granted, I can understand that this can be a little bit difficult because there are so many different things people can need to be warned about. I think having a good collection of mainstream content warnings is more necessary because, like, for me, like, I'm terrified of rabbits, okay? Don't get into it, but I'm very deathly afraid of them. And if there is a rabbit in the book, obviously they're not going to put content warning rabbits. That's not going to be a thing. But things like suicide ideation, rape, drug and alcohol abuse, those kinds of things that can be very triggering for a person, I think definitely should be included in books nowadays. I think it should be an easily accessible item on the book jacket itself, or right on the first pages or something, or in the summaries, something. Not just with people and commenting on Goodreads and showing the content warnings, because boy was that difficult for me when I was going through all these books and deciding which books I wanted to unhaul. The Goodreads reviews are what really helped me figure out which books I actually still have an interest in, because maybe there's some content warnings I don't want to read about. Doesn't mean they're a bad book, it just means not for me. Unpopular opinion number 4 is, this is about reading. You don't read audiobooks, you listen to audiobooks. As a linguist, I'm like, okay, I get this. I do get this. This is a language thing. This is not necessarily our audiobooks books thing, but sometimes I say I'm reading an audiobook, or I'll say I'm reading this book on audio, you know? And I think that's just a bit of like colloquialism and how language is changing and shifting to mean different things. But I definitely understand the nitpickiness of, you don't read an audiobook, listen to it, which is, I get it. I still count it as reading overall, but yes, you listen to an audiobook. I can understand this one. Unpopular opinion number 5. Ooh, this is a good one. This one's about writing. Write what you don't know. So we all know the age-old saying, write what you know. And that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. That works for if you're doing, you know, say an own voices book or a literary fiction book, things like that. But how am I supposed to write a sci-fi novel or a fantasy novel? I don't actually know any dragons personally, but I sure as hell am gonna make them up. I get where people say write what you know, but also write what you don't know. Research. Research is one of the many, many parts of writing in general. Now, that being said, writing a book about a personal experience of someone, like a marginalized person, and claiming it as your own is definitely what you shouldn't be doing. So me as a white author should not be writing the experience of being a Black transgender immigrant, because I don't have that experience and I don't know that, and I'm not going to take that voice away from someone who has that experience, because likely I will do it very incorrectly, so I would not be doing that. However, I write fantasy things. I write about having a house full of creatures and cryptids and stuff, and obviously I don't know, you know, a Bigfoot in real life, but I do know about dog training, so I have a little bit there. But you can build on things you don't know, you can research, you can ask people for help, you can have sensitivity readers and things. There are lots of different ways. So having this kind of gatekeepiness of, you can't have this character be your main character because of such and such reason, is very dangerous to the literary world, because who's to say this person with this experience wants to write it? Maybe somebody else has more of the skilled word talent to write it and they can collaborate, which would be awesome, but no one's going to know everything. So as an author, you have to write what you don't know in order to understand it. Does that make sense? I feel like I went on a little bit of a weird tangent, but I can see where this one's coming from, and it can be utilized well, but also just consider the context that you're taking this advice. Let's critically think about that one. Unpopular opinion number 6 is, ooh, okay, this is another reading one. It is okay to reject a book by a popular author. 100% agree with this one. There are many a popular author I can't stand, and I will not be reading their books. We can do things like talking about J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, I have a lot of authors, Cassandra Clare, I don't want to read. I probably won't be reading Sarah J. Maas anytime soon. I'm pretty sure about that one. And there's nothing necessarily against her. It's just, I don't want to read it. It's too big a series, or it's not the type of books that I want to read anymore. And that's okay, because everyone has different tastes and opinions. And it's okay not to want to read the next Stephen King book. It's fine, okay? Horror's not my genre. There you go. It's totally fine to reject one, especially like, I remember getting a bit of heat when I disliked the book Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. I really, really did not like that book, and it was blowing up like crazy. Even my eldest sister really liked that book, but I hated it. I hated it so, so much. That turns into a conversation about a completely different thing. It's not the fact that I just didn't like the content of the book. I didn't like the story or anything. People take that a little bit too personally when you don't like something. And it's like, chill. Everyone's allowed their own opinion. I don't expect everyone to love my books. That's fine. But I like hope some people do, and that's the balance between it. Like, so popular authors, for the most part, are popular for a reason, but everyone has their own opinions and tastes. Leave it at that. Unpopular opinion number 7 wasn't coming out. Oh, another reading one. DNFing is good. Ooh. Okay, I get why DNFing is good. I don't DNF. I think I've DNF'd maybe once or twice in my reading life. And that is because I was severely offended by the content of it. I DNF'd a Pride and Prejudice retelling because of what it interpreted a modern day Lizzie Bennet to be. And I wholeheartedly disagreed with her characterization. And I DNF'd another one that I just hated. It just sucked. I don't DNF. Even if I'm angry at the book, I tend to keep going just to see where it concludes, because I don't like not knowing. Even if it's a book I hate, I want to see where this is going, and then I have a full opinion about it. Now, that's not to say that you can't have a full opinion about a book that you've DNF'd, but I tend to not pay attention to reviews of people who say, I DNF'd this. So, because then I'm like, well, then you didn't finish it. You didn't know what the ending was. Because I have had some books that I thought I was going to really hate, and the ending saved it. Looking at you, Incendiary. Incendiary's ending saved it for me, but I'm still unhauling it, though. So I guess it didn't really save it. But it did give it a higher rating. I get DNFing can be good. I just don't like DNFing at all. Unpopular opinion number 8 is this one. Book fairs are classist. We're talking about classism a lot today. A lot today. Wow, hello, English. I can speak it. I definitely understand this. Book fairs, and I think this was in context of things like Scholastic Book Fair and stuff, where children should always have access to reading. And Scholastic Book Fair, things like that, tend to, kids have to come with money to buy the books. And I can definitely see this, because as someone who grew up pretty poor, I don't think I ever really got to purchase, maybe I got to purchase one book if I was lucky. I definitely got to go to the fairs, and I always wanted the books, but I never had the money. I think maybe one time I had some money to do it, and I think I bought a Greek Gods book. I know I'd been eyeing it for a really, really long time. I just remember seeing this, because the front cover of it, I think, had Athena on it. And I was just obsessed with Athena in like 5th grade. Athena was like, yeah. And then, lo and behold, I'm really more of an Artemis girl. Anyway, I do understand how book fairs can be classist. It definitely, having children should be able to read no matter what. Libraries are there for a reason, but not a lot of people utilize library services, and should be. I think that was another unpopular opinion in here, is talking about libraries, but I understand that. Same with book fairs, even for adults. Usually I find the people who are there tend to be more well-off people who are able to buy the books. And so that's a thing about like how education itself can be very classist, and it's been that way for a long time, where you can go all the way back where, working people weren't even allowed to go to colleges and things, weren't even allowed to study, women weren't allowed to read for a lot of things. And there is a history with literature and classism that you can't ignore. You can still enjoy literature and things, but you do have to recognize that, like, for myself, I have the privilege of owning all of these books. I'm privileged in that way, that I have access to them. So I think that's something that more literary people need to acknowledge, is the system that we're living in. But there are a lot of great programs trying to help get literature into the hands of people who otherwise would not normally be able to attain it. Unpopular opinion number 9 is this one. Ooh, publishing one. Getting published by one of the big 4 isn't a sign of skill. And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about what is necessary for an author to become a best-selling author these days, and I do agree with this. Again, I have books on my shelf, well, not anymore because I probably got rid of them, who were published by the Big 4. If you don't know who the Big 4 are, they're things like Macmillan Audio, HarperCollins, Penguin, all those people, the big names. It used to be Big 5 and then one bought the other, and now we're down to a Big 4 and probably pretty soon down to a Big 3. So that is not going well for everybody. Being published by them does not necessarily mean you are a skilled writer, because I have read some terrible, terrible books that I'm just like, how did this get published by the Big 4? I definitely do think that there obviously is weight to a book that is traditionally published by them, because it's weird, because I do think there is a bit of weight to a book that has been published traditionally, but when that book turns out to be garbage, you're just like, what? How is this published? And I'm not kind of situation. I definitely think that there are people who have been able to utilize their privilege and wealth in order to become a best-selling author from one of the Big 4. So not for everybody. Obviously there are fantastic authors out there who deserve to be traditionally published with all of their widespread media and distribution, but some, you know that they're there for a completely different reason. All right, and the final unpopular opinion I'm going to be talking about today is, author-tubers are not obligated to watching author-tube videos, and I can agree with this, because we all have different things that we like to consume versus what we like to create. Now, I will say it's better for you to do that, to not watch, but to watch author-tube videos, especially if you're a new author-tuber, because then you're gonna kind of get more of the lay of the land. I don't think you're obligated to, like, only watch author-tube. You can have other interests, obviously, and sometimes other people are making content you're not a fan of, or their style of filming and video making is not something you want to watch. I have a lot of those where I'm like, I support you as an author, but I don't really like your videos, so I don't watch them. That's just because I have my own personal preferences of what I like to watch and what's entertaining to me. And sometimes author-tubers, sometimes people, you know, in general, YouTubers can get boring or are just not the content I care about. There's some that are like really, really popular author-tubers that get lots of views and stuff, but their videos that they make, I have no interest in them. And that's fine. It is okay not to watch other author-tubers if you are an author-tuber yourself. Hopefully you do watch a few intermixed, you know, not every single video, but you catch a few. That would be nice, because we are a community who can support each other, but that opens an entire different can of worms that we didn't get to today on this episode of I React to Different Unpopular Opinions in the Literary World. Feel free to submit your unpopular opinions down in the comments below, or on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. I may do another part 2 to this little series talking about unpopular opinions. I think there are plenty of them to go around, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can check me out on Ko-fi and support me as a content creator. I would super duper appreciate it, and I will see you next time, cuties. Bye!